Imagine coming home, expecting the familiar peace of your quiet neighborhood, only to find a giant, ugly wound carved into the side of your property, a raw, earthen scar snaking up the hillside, a testament to someone else's ambition, built on your land, without your permission, without so much as a word. This isn't a story about a simple misunderstanding. It's about a level of arrogance so profound, it assumes kindness is weakness. But it's also a story about how sometimes, the most elegant solution to a big, expensive problem is a rusty old pickup truck. And a man who's had enough. If you believe that justice isn't always found in a courtroom, and that bullies should never ever be allowed to win, then you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and get ready for a masterclass in proportional revenge. This is a story you're going to want to hear, to the very end. Let's get into it. Our story takes place in one of those uniquely beautiful, but challenging parts of the country. We're talking about hills so steep that the very concept of a normal, straight driveway is a fantasy. Here, the roads to the houses are an art form of engineering, forced to switch back, zigzagging their way up the incline. The local building code is unforgiving for a reason. A straight driveway would be less of a path and more of a launch ramp. This geography is crucial because it sets the stage for both the problem and its brilliant solution. The heroes of our story are a wonderful elderly couple. Let's call them Arthur and Eleanor. For decades, they had been the unofficial heart of this little community. The kind of people whose garden is always immaculate, who always have a wave for you, and who remember your dog's name. They lived a quiet, peaceful life in a house they'd owned for 40 years. Next to them, for as long as they could remember, was a vacant lot, a steep, untamed slice of hillside, covered in native trees and brush. It was their quiet green neighbor, until it wasn't. The lot was sold. Soon the distant rumble of machinery became a daily reality. A new house was coming. Arthur and Eleanor, being the good-natured people they were happy for their future neighbors. New life in the community was a good thing, they thought. They had no idea that their new neighbor didn't share their sense of community, or for that matter, their respect for basic property law. One afternoon, they returned home from a grocery run. But as they rounded the bend toward their house, Eleanor let out a small gasp. Arthur slowed the car to a crawl. They both just stared, their hearts sinking. Where there was once a gentle, tree-lined slope at the corner of their property, there was now a massive, brutal gash. An excavator had carved a wide, sweeping path out of the hillside. The path started down by the main road, sliced directly across the front corner of their land, and then snaked its way up toward the construction site. It was a driveway for the new neighbor, built on their property. There was no phone call, no knock on the door, no polite letter asking for an easement, just the deafening roar of entitlement, materialized as a scar of dirt and rock on land they had nurtured for half a lifetime. You can imagine their shock. It wasn't just about the land itself, it was the violation, the absolute disregard. But Arthur and Eleanor weren't the types to fly off the handle. They were reasonable. Surely, Arthur said, his voice tight with disbelief, surely this is just an honest mistake, an error by the construction crew. They walked over to the site, their feet unsteady on the churned-up earth. They found the excavator operator, a man who was just doing his job. He was polite enough, but knew nothing. He was just following the plans he was given. He did, however, have the phone number for the new owner. With a deep breath, trying to keep his voice calm and neighborly, Arthur made the call. He politely introduced himself, welcomed the new owner to the neighborhood, and then, as gently as he could, explained the situation. "I'm afraid your crew has made a bit of a mistake," Arthur said. "It seems the new driveway has been cut across a corner of our property." The response on the other end of the line was not what he expected. There was no apology, no concern, no, "Oh my gosh, let me look into that right away." Instead, there was a cold, dismissive laugh. "Let's call this new neighbor Mr. Entitlement." "No, it hasn't." Mr. Entitlement snapped back, his voice dripping with the kind of casual arrogance that makes your blood boil. "My surveyor marked the lines. The driveway is on my land." Arthur was taken aback. With all due respect, sir, he tried again. We've lived here for 40 years. We know exactly where our property line is. The survey pins are still in place. I'd be happy to show you. I don't have time for that, Mr. Entitlement scoffed. If you think you have a problem, that's your problem. Talk to a lawyer. And with that, he hung up. Arthur stood there, phone in his hand, a feeling of hot, helpless anger washing over him. This wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. This man had knowingly, or with extreme negligence, stolen a piece of their land and was now daring them to do something about it. To be absolutely sure, Arthur and Eleanor went out and found the original survey pins, buried deep in the soil. They ran a string line. The result was undeniable and infuriating. The driveway wasn't just on their property. A significant functional curve of it was carved deep into their land. Without that corner, the switchback simply wouldn't work. They tried calling Mr. Entitlement again. The conversations, if you could call them that, only got worse. He was rude, belligerent, and unmoving. He knew exactly what he was doing. He was banking on the fact that two elderly people wouldn't have the money or the stomach for a long, ugly legal battle. Suing him would cost thousands, maybe tens of thousands in legal fees. It would be stressful, and in the end, what would they get? A court order to remove a driveway that was already there, leaving an even uglier mess on their land. The damage was done. The scar was permanent. So, they were stuck. Every single day, they woke up to the sound of hammers and saws from the rising monument to their neighbor's greed. Every time they left their house, they had to look at that stolen piece of land. It was a constant, grinding reminder of their powerlessness. The situation stewed. The house got closer to completion, and Mr. Entitlement was winning. Now, this is where our story takes a turn. Because in that same quiet neighborhood lived my friend's dad. Let's call him Dave. Dave is the kind of guy who embodies the phrase, "Still waters run deep." He's a blue-collar man, a man of simple pleasures, a cold beer after a long day, the satisfaction of a job well done, and a fierce, unwavering sense of fairness. He really liked Arthur and Eleanor. He'd known them for years and considered them pillars of the community, the kind of genuine, kind-hearted people who don't have a single mean bone in their bodies. One afternoon, Dave was out walking his dog when he saw Arthur and Eleanor in their yard. He could tell something was wrong. The usual bright smiles were gone, replaced by a weary sadness. He stopped to chat, and the whole sorry story came tumbling out. As Dave listened, he felt a slow burn starting in his chest. He heard about the scar on the land, the dismissive phone calls, the blatant theft, and the couple's feeling of total helplessness. He looked at these two wonderful people who had been so profoundly disrespected, and the slow burn turned into a righteous fire. He went home that evening, but he couldn't shake it. He sat on his back porch, a beer in his hand, staring out at the darkening sky. The injustice of it all churned in his mind. This bully, this Mr. Entitlement, thought he could just roll into town and walk all over good people. He was counting on them being too nice, too old, too poor to fight back. Dave took a long sip of his beer, and then another, and that's when it hit him. It wasn't a drunken idea. It was a beer-fueled moment of pure, crystalline clarity. The kind of idea that is so simple, so elegant, and so legally perfect that it's a work of art. His face broke into a grin. He picked up his phone and called Arthur. "Arthur, it's Dave," he said. "I've been thinking about your problem, and I think I have an idea. It's a little unconventional, but I need your permission." He laid out the plan. On the other end of the line, there was a moment of silence, and then Dave heard something he hadn't heard from the couple in weeks. A chuckle, a genuine, delighted laugh from Eleanor in the background, followed by Arthur's booming, "Dave, you're a genius. You have our blessing. Do it." Permission granted. The plan was a go. Dave had an old second vehicle, a late 90s Ford F-150. It was rusty, a little beat up, but it ran like a dream and was built like a tank. It was the perfect instrument for this particular brand of justice. He hopped in, the old engine turning over with a familiar grumble, and drove the 5 minutes over to Arthur and Eleanor's house. He didn't park in their driveway. He didn't park on the street. With surgical precision, Dave drove the old pickup right onto the corner of Arthur and Eleanor's property, the very corner that the new driveway cut across. He positioned the truck perfectly, so that it completely and utterly blocked the path. No car, no truck, no construction vehicle could get past it. And here was the beauty of it. The truck's tires, from front to back, were situated entirely on Arthur and Eleanor's land. Not an inch of it was on the neighbor's property or the illegal driveway itself. It was, for all legal purposes, a vehicle parked by a guest on a private residential lot. Before he left, he placed a small, neatly written note on the inside of the driver's side window. It had his name, his phone number, and a simple message. Then he locked it up, gave a nod to Arthur, who was watching from his window with a massive grin, and walked home. The next morning, at 7 a.m. sharp, the construction crew arrived. They were ready for another day of work, their trucks loaded with tools and materials. They turned off the main road, heading up the switchback, and then they stopped. There, blocking their path like a rusty, immovable sentinel, was an old F. They couldn't get around it. The hill was too steep on either side. The driveway was the only way up. There was a moment of confusion, then annoyance. Who was the jackass who parked their junker truck here? One of the foremen got out, saw the note in the window, and dialed the number. Dave answered on the second ring, his voice calm and pleasant. Hello? Yeah. Who is this? The foreman grumbled. You've parked your truck right in the middle of our driveway. We can't get to the job site. You need to move it, now. Oh, I don't think I can do that, Dave said politely. What do you mean? You can't do that. We've got work to do. Well, Dave explained, savoring every word. You see, that truck isn't parked in your driveway. It's parked on private property, with the express permission of the property owners. I'm a guest here. There was a pause on the other end. The foreman was processing this. So, you're not going to move it? That is correct, Dave confirmed. I will not be moving it. And just so we're crystal clear, that vehicle is legally parked. If you or anyone else attempts to tow it, move it, or even touch it, I will be pressing charges for trespassing and attempted theft. Have a wonderful day. He hung up. The construction crew was in a bind. They weren't lawyers. They weren't about to risk criminal charges over a property dispute they wanted no part of. And there was absolutely no way they were going to haul thousands of pounds of tools and materials up that steep hill by hand. So, they did the only thing they could do. They called their boss, Mr. Entitlement. They told him they couldn't get to the site. They told him why. And they told him that the clock was now running on his dime. They would be paid for a full day, and for every subsequent day they couldn't work until he sorted out his property boundary dispute. You can almost picture it. Mr. Entitlement, probably in his fancy office somewhere, feeling his blood pressure skyrocket. The calm, calculated world where he always got his way had just been shattered by a rusty F-150. He was losing money. A lot of it. Every single day, his multi-$100,000 project was stalled. It was costing him a fortune in labor, loan interest, and scheduling delays. He did what any raging bully would do. He called the people he thought were the weakest link. He dialed Arthur's number. Absolutely furious. The second Eleanor answered, he started screaming. He yelled. He threatened. He cursed. But something had changed. Arthur and Eleanor weren't helpless anymore. They had leverage. They had Dave's rusty old truck, standing guard on their behalf. When he finally paused for breath, Eleanor's voice came through the line, as calm and steady as a surgeon's hand. Sir, she said, I am going to stop you right there. A vehicle is parked on our property, with our permission. It is not our problem if this inconveniences you. If you would like to discuss a solution, we are open a civil conversation, but we will not be yelled at. Goodbye. And she hung up. Checkmate. Mr. Entitlement raged. He fumed. He probably called his own lawyer, who likely told him the infuriating truth. He had no legal leg to stand on. The truck was on their land. He was the one who had trespassed. He was the one who was losing thousands of dollars every single day. The power dynamic had been completely and beautifully inverted. His house sat there, half finished. His construction crew sat at home, getting paid. His bank was still charging him interest. All because of a beat-up old truck and two elderly people who had finally been pushed far enough. After a few more days of bleeding money, the angry phone calls stopped. A much more subdued, almost polite call came through. Mr. Entitlement was finally ready to negotiate. He wanted his house built. He needed that driveway, and Arthur and Eleanor, with Dave's quiet guidance, were now in the position of power. They didn't just ask for an apology. They didn't just ask for the value of the land. They ended up with a legal easement, professionally drawn up and filed at his expense, and in exchange for that easement, they received a check. The original story just says it was a significant sum. But I like to imagine it was a sum that not only covered any potential legal fees they might have incurred, but also paid for the emotional distress, a brand new garden, a very nice vacation, and a healthy contribution to their retirement fund. It was a sum that made it clear that their peace of mind had a very high price tag. The check cleared. The papers were signed. Dave got a call from Arthur. "The Eagle has landed," he said. Dave drove back over, started up the F-150, and moved it. The next day, the construction crew was back to work. And the reward for our hero, Dave? He received several cases of his favorite beer as a thank you from Arthur and Eleanor. But more than that, he got the deep, profound satisfaction of seeing justice serve. He got to see an arrogant bully, who thought he was untouchable, brought to his knees by the simplest plan imaginable. It's a powerful reminder. You should never ever underestimate the quiet ones. Because kindness is not weakness. And sometimes, the most effective tool for putting an asshole in his place isn't a lawyer or a lawsuit. It's a well-placed, rusty old F1. In the end, it's about respect. The neighbor learned a very expensive lesson in it, and Arthur and Eleanor had theirs restored, proving that when good people are pushed too far, they don't just push back, they park. What a brilliant and satisfying story. What do you think? Was this revenge perfectly proportional? Have you ever seen a simple, clever plan completely dismantle a bully? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I love reading them. And if you enjoyed this story as much as I did, make sure you've hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next time a deserving person gets their ultimate revenge. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.